The Google graveyard is a myth. Well, it's not a myth. It exists. It's right there. But the way it's been used as a harbinger of Google Stadia's inevitable doom is wrong. And I'm going to tell you why right now. Before we go any further, please consider subscribing to this channel for more video game content. I've done a lot of Stadia-focused content lately, and it's been really fun. The Stadia community has been incredibly welcoming, so I will probably keep doing Stadia content in addition to my normal, non-Stadia gaming content. Give me a thumbs up in this video if you like this stuff. That tells me to keep making it. Ever since Google announced their game streaming initiative called Stadia, large pockets of the gaming world have doubted its potential to succeed, and some outright hate Stadia for even existing. Now, believe it or not, I don't necessarily blame those people. Antagonism toward the unknown can be a natural reaction. I get it. I mean, here's this mega corporation, Google, trying to buy its way into the living rooms of gamers who have already aligned themselves to companies and platforms that have had to work hard for years and years to earn that alignment. Stadia's very existence, to those devoted Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, and PC fans, probably feels disingenuous and pompous. But sometimes the justification of the antagonism is flawed. Such is the case with the Google Graveyard. The Google Graveyard is an online repository of over 200 apps, services, and hardware that Google has launched and later killed since Google's creation in 1998. By contrast, Google currently has 224 active apps, services, tools, and pieces of hardware, many of which are so ubiquitous you probably forgot about them. You might be watching this video on YouTube from a link maybe sent by Gmail, or you discovered this video in a Google search while listening to YouTube Music by way of your Google Fiber internet connection. Maybe you took notes while watching this video using Google Keep or a Google Doc on Google Drive. But then you realized you like writing in notebooks more, so you clicked an ad served by Google to buy some notebooks. But the notebooks, they came in damaged, so you called up customer service on your Pixel phone using Google Fi phone service. Okay, I understand that that series of events is absurd. Nobody loves a single company that much. But my point is that when criticizing Google for killing off products, you've also got to keep in mind the many important things Google has maintained. But me simply stating that observation isn't enough. Rather than simply reflecting on those numbers, we have to ask why a company, any company, would stop maintaining certain products. The short answer is because those products don't generate revenue. A for-profit company like Google exists to make a profit. Historically, Google's main revenue source comes from their ad service, which relies on users. The more users Google has, the more people they can sell ads to. There's a trend with these canceled Google Graveyard-did services. They don't generate revenue in and of themselves. Rather, they aim to increase users to then increase ad revenue. Of the 204 products currently in the Google Graveyard as of the recording of this video on July 22nd, 2020, 163 are services with ambitions to increase the number of users. If these services don't increase user counts enough to increase ad revenue, then shareholders are upset, and Google has no choice but to kill the services. Simply put, if a product isn't contributing to increased revenue, then it should be killed. This isn't just a Google decision, this is a good business decision. If Stadia doesn't contribute to increased revenue, either by way of game sales, hardware sales, service sales, or more engaged users that can be advertised to, then Stadia should be killed. Microsoft would make the same decision, Sony and Nintendo as well. In fact, these big players in the gaming world have been doing it for years, and to a much more aggressive extent than Google. So let's talk about the Xbox crypt, the PlayStation cemetery, and the Nintendo, another word for graveyard. Necropolis, the Nintendo Necropolis. That was a good one. Google has canceled about 50% of its products in its 22 years of existence, according to the Google Graveyard. Keep in mind this 50% rate isn't limited to just gaming hardware, which is another problem with citing the Google Graveyard as evidence of Stadia's impending doom. But I won't parse that because I'm going to show you that it doesn't even matter. Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft are much more egregious with killing products. For this video, I'm going to focus on first-party consoles specifically. If I were to expand to services, apps, console accessories, and software, each of these gaming platforms would have a much higher kill rate. Imagine all of the controller and console stands, charging stations, and of course games that are no longer available. How many games in all the various form factors are no longer produced? A lot. Now, it's important to realize that each game and each delivery mechanism, physical and digital, is a different SKU and therefore a different product, and should be factored into the respective company's graveyard. If, of course, this graveyard debate is one you want to have, which again, the entire point of this video is that the graveyard argument doesn't make any sense. Xbox. Xbox has released 10 consoles since 2001, with 8 of those consoles either killed or in the process of being killed. That's an 80% kill rate with an average of 0.42 consoles killed per year. PlayStation. PlayStation has released 21 consoles since 1994, with 15 of those either killed or in the process of being killed. That's a 71% kill rate with an average of 0.58 consoles killed per year. And then there's Nintendo. Oh boy. Now, it's impossible for me to track down every official SKU for every Nintendo console and handheld, so I stuck to the main ones. Nintendo has released 32 consoles over the years since 1977, 29 of those either killed or in the process of being killed. That's a crazy 91% kill rate with an average of 0.67 consoles killed per year. Stadia, on the other hand, has had one console/service since 2019, with 0 of those killed. Now, I understand this is an absurd data point, but that's partly my point. If the graveyard argument must be honored, then we cannot look at just Xbox. We have to look at all of Microsoft. We cannot look just at PlayStation. We have to look at all of Sony. And I'm way too lazy to continue beating this dead horse. History shows us that major video game platform companies kill a console roughly every 2 years. As streaming services become more popular, I estimate we'll start to see things adapt, and we will start to see a major iteration of each streaming platform once every 2 years. Now, you may be thinking, but Caleb, many of the consoles you mention are iterations and evolutions of previous consoles. Why continue selling an Xbox One when there's an Xbox Series X? I promise you, if the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4 could continue to drive profit, Xbox and PlayStation would continue selling them. But competition with other platforms means consoles become obsolete, so those consoles get sent to their respective graveyards. If these companies could get by with selling the exact same console for 20 or 30 years, they absolutely would. But us consumers don't let them. Therefore, products get killed. If anyone is to blame or get credit for the product graveyards, it's us. Us consumers are the Grim Reapers, and we are better for it, I argue. But if we are going to entertain that logic, as flawed as it may be, then you must also allow Google the benefit of iteration and evolution. One example is Google Play Music, which is slated to be sent to the graveyard at the end of 2020. Antagonists towards Stadia will claim this is yet another killed service without accepting that Google Play Music's functionality is being absorbed into YouTube Music, which isn't dead. Now, of course, there are several examples of products that have been killed entirely without being absorbed into the other products, but to ignore those that don't follow such a path to death is irresponsible. Lastly, consider that the video game industry is a known entity. Google has a history of innovating with new products that aren't aligned to such established frameworks. Often, Google is iterating upon the very search service that it helped pioneer and continues to dominate. With such innovation comes great risk. Now, I'm surprised only 50% of Google's products have been killed, honestly. Because video games have an audience and a stable history, I don't see Stadia getting tossed into the graveyard anytime soon. Now, I am not going to suggest that Google will never kill Stadia. I don't know that any more than the haters themselves. But I can say that citing the Google graveyard as evidence of such an argument either way is ignorant at best and disingenuous at worst. I don't blame any of these companies for canceling products. That's part of running a smart business. I've tried in this video to highlight that citing the Google graveyard without also acknowledging product cancellations for the comparative companies in question is hypocritical. That said, and I may regret this, I'm always open for civilized debate. If you have a counterpoint to any of my arguments, feel free to note them in the comments below. I only ask that you follow 2 rules. 1, be nice. Be nice to me and to the other commenters. And 2, cite your arguments by linking to your sources. I believe YouTube automatically categorizes comments with links as spam, so your comment may not appear right away if you include a link, but know that I'll approve the comment as long as YouTube allows me to, and if the comment follows rule number 1. This was a tough video to make, so I am happy that you watched all the way to the end, and because you watched all the way to the end, you must like it, right? So please click the like button and consider subscribing. I don't know if either of those things helps with increasing the number of video views, but it sure makes me feel good.